Hello, everybody, and welcome to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown. Today, we are going to be tackling the discography of the 70s pop rock, in some parts progressive rock, later some parts synth pop. Just absolutely delightful discography of the Electric Light Orchestra, led by Jeff Lynne and other people that I am blanking on names right now. Well known for just having some of the best produced music of all time. If you think otherwise, I think that you are wrong, so it's all good. With that being said, though, they have 14 records. It's a daunting task to do all of this at once, so had to have a guest with me. This is my buddy Patrick, and we're going to be discussing the full discography of such. I don't think there's any loose ends, I guess ELO part 2, but no thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
With that being said, prior knowledge of the Electric Light Orchestra.
Well, first, Adrian, thank you so much for letting me be a guest on your channel and sharing our mutual passion for ELO. We love the Jeffster. He's awesome. Great melody writer, fantastic producer, wonderful songsmith. He's just spectacular. I can't wait to get into it. Very familiar with ELO's catalog, starting with the self-titled No Answer in the United States debut album, all the way through Time. Secret Messages I had heard several times, and I was a big fan when I was a kid, so this was on as I was growing up. These albums came out of my daily rotation of listening, but I was always listening to ELO, something from ELO. They consistently could produce fantastic music. Jeff is obviously the mastermind behind the project and co-founder of the group. And then I would say was not familiar at all with the 21st Century ELO album. So I knew Balance of Power. I'd heard it once, and then that was it. So those were all a new listening to me.
Alrighty, cool. As you can tell just by looking at me, I don't quite go as far back with the ELO as you do, but I'm sorry, that's rude.
What are you saying, Adrian?
Let's skate around that. But anyways, yeah, ELO pretty. I think I didn't exactly hide my emotions very well at the start there. I absolutely love this group. I said at the end of the Spoon video, probably they're up there for my favorite band in general, but definitely top 5. I wrote a spoiler here. I own 13 of the 14. So and I like going on one of them because I forgot to buy it. Whoops. Yeah, I want to say I knew everything going into this up to Secret Messages. Some of them more than others, however. And anything after Secret Messages, I kind of discredited before this point. I feel bad about doing that for maybe 1 or 2 records. But with that being said, knew a lot of this, loved a lot of this, and I am just so excited to get into this discography. We decided quickly beforehand we're going to be doing a batch of 4 at the start, then we're going to tackle the top 10 separately. Would you like me to kick things off, or would you like to?
You kick things off.
Alrighty, I don't think that my list is going to be too controversial. Maybe 1 or 2 things that could get some eyebrows raised, but at the bottom for me is going to be the record Balance of Power from, I believe, 1986. Balance of Power isn't terrible. And from viewed from a certain lens, it could honestly be taken as a very good synth pop record. The issue is many merits that it succeeds at being synth pop, it fails at being an Electric Light Orchestra record. Notably absent across this record is the orchestra. They lean far heavier into synth work and the different production styles of the 80s. And because of that, it does end up sounding slightly dated. Despite that, Lynne is able to make it listenable in that regard, unlike other records. And his writing, to me, isn't quite at the par of something like Secret Messages, Time of Discovery, but it's still not bad, and there's plenty of great songs here, stuff like Heaven Only Knows, and the stretch from Secret Lies to Sorrow About to Fall a good bit. And Calling America would be my favorite song here. I think that was really good. The rest of the tracks, while not being bad, due to they just lack a lot of what makes the Electric Light Orchestra so special within the 70s and the early 80s. For me, I have this at 3 stars. I think it's a decent record, but it's not really much of an Electric Light Orchestra record. Number 13 for me, I'm talking about Zoom, the only record that I don't own here. After a very long pause from the Electric Light Orchestra brand, Jeff Lynne is back with a pretty killer cast of additional guests to help him make an ELO record. But this is a weird one. It's very similar to something like, say, an Out of the Blue or a New World Record, but it has a ton of blues elements. And while I don't dislike blues music, I don't think ELO and blues really blend that well at all. Pretty much any time that the heavier blues emphasis is put on, I just think that it sounds really out of place and just doesn't blend well with the ELO formula. Despite that, when they are sticking with that Electric Light Orchestra formula, there are some very strong cuts on here. My favorite ones would be Moment in Paradise, Stranger on a Street, It Really Doesn't Matter, and Ordinary Dream. But overall, it's decent record, just not really a great ELO record. At number 12, I'm talking about the record from Out of Nowhere. Once again, it's not bad. ELO don't have a bad record, as you could tell, but it feels like one of their more derivative releases. He's very much doing what he was in the 70s with Face to Music, and it's not quite as good as the songs on Alone in the Universe. It's still very good orchestrated pop, and the highlights across this record for me are Help Yourself, Down Came the Rain, Losing You, and Time of Her Life. The big issue here is this is what, some 40 years out from when the group started, and it just feels very derivative. This is their first comeback record. It'd be a little bit more excusable, but this is their third at this point, and it just, I would hope for a little bit more growth for the band. This is going to be a strong 3, though, because the highs are really high and there just isn't really any lows. Yeah, number 11, maybe a bit of a take. I would guess people would have this lower, but maybe not this low. I'm talking about Secret Messages. It's not nearly as strong as the Runner records before it, but there's still plenty of absolute superb material across this. They did step a little bit away from the synth pop direction at the time. It feels a lot closer to their original sound. I believe the original orchestrator came back on this record and helped to get them back on their sound. If I'm wrong about that, whoops. His writing, it's a bit derivative based upon time, which I think is part of his peak, but we will get to that in a long while. Lynne is still in top form, though, and a lot of the influences that he was drawing from, like the 50s and really early synth pop and new wave from time, are still here. The best songs would be Secret Messages, Loser Gone Wild, Stranger, and Train of Gold. While very good, it does seem to mark a little bit of a decline from the group, but it's a massive step up from Out of Nowhere. I'm in the low 4 already. So I have 11 Electric Light Orchestra records I think are very good.
Wow.
But notably, Jeff Lynne wanted this to be a double record, and in 2018, his wishes were granted as the original double record was released. Overall, though, it doesn't really help it out that much. My favorites of the new songs added were Endless Lies, Buildings Have Eyes, and Hello, My Old Friend. I just don't think that the songs necessarily blend as well together, and the track listing leaves a little bit to be desired. But yeah, still a low 4 for me. 11 very strong Electric Light Orchestra records.
Impressive. Wow. Okay. So I've got 3 of those in my 4 batch here at the bottom, and 1 is going to move a little bit higher. And obviously 1 that you haven't mentioned yet is going to replace it. So I'd say my number 14 is from Out of Nowhere. It doesn't have even a song like When I Was a Boy from Alone in the Universe, right? There's nothing really to hang your hat on here. And Jeff Lynne, a lot's expected of Jeff, right? He's quite the melody writer, he's quite the arranger, and this is really more of Jeff's post Wilburys work than it is an ELO album per se. In fact, these 21st century ELO albums, or Jeff Lynne's ELO albums, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously he needed to put the name on there to help sell the albums, but Also, he was in a dispute with Bev Bevins, the drummer from the original lineup, who tried to continue on with Electric Light Orchestra 2 and failed miserably. Although from what I understand, they produced 2 albums. But there was like a cover band. It was almost like an ELO cover band, sort of like funny. Those arena rock bands from like the 70s, Journey fell into this, Styx fell into this, where they were basically cover bands of themselves, with maybe one member left, maybe none. Total change in DNA. The From Out of Nowhere, I think, does have some strong songs, including the title track. I like Help Yourself a lot. I like Losing You a lot, and Time of Life, I think, is good. But you're right, nothing stands out. Sorry, I need to move along faster here because we're talking about the bottom 4 and we got to get to the good stuff. Alone in the Universe is what I've got in the number 13 slot. I think it's a little bit better. I don't think it's all that much better. When I Was a Boy, I really like. I think that's an excellent song. And I think here again, there's some post Wilburys work. And you can hear it. You can hear Armchair Theater too. You can hear Jeff Lynne's solo stuff in this. And it really is just a Jeff Lynne solo record for the most part. When the Night Comes, I like a lot. I think another standout track is One Step at a Time on here. And I would, I think that there's a good reason to justify this as 3-star album. I've got it at 2.5, but I just don't foresee myself coming back to this album. That's the problem. It's got to be like 3.5 stars or above for me on my scale if I'm going to re-listen, if I'm going to put the time and effort into a revisit. So this is not one I would do. I totally agree with you on Balance of Power. That's my number 12. I don't know if this was just to satisfy a contract with Epic Records, with CBS, maybe. Have no idea. It's just not very good. Heaven Only Knows is, I think that was released as a single along with Calling America, but the pop world had left Jeff behind to some degree. And this was the time Jeff was really starting to work with Tom Petty, George Harrison, Ringo. He really was and Roy Orbison. His production work was starting to come about. He was going to end up co-founding the Traveling Wilburys with George Harrison very soon after this album. I think this album came out in 86, and 88 was the Wilburys release. So this just, again, doesn't do it. It's very synth focused. I think Richard Tandy's the only original cast member from ELO on this, and he only plays on one song. So and Bev Bevins is on this. I think he's on it. There's so much drum programming on it. I'm not sure if he's actually playing or not. So that would be my number 12, and my number 11 is going to be. This might be controversial. It's going to be ELO 2. I think this is not nearly as good as the self-titled debut. Roy Wood is credited on this album with the first track playing bass in Old England Town, and I like that track, actually. That's a good way to start off. Jeff Lynne, he knew how to sequence his albums really well, and he always had his lead-in track. His starting track was always fantastic every time. That's no exception here. I really like that song, and I love Roll Over Beethoven. I loved it. That was the first ELO song I'd heard when I was a kid. Loved it. I'd never heard anything like it, even though it had been done before. A great mashup of symphonic elements, orchestral elements, and good old 50s rock and roll, right? And a Chuck Berry song. So I think there's some good parts of Mama just drags, I think, from the sun to the world, that boogie breakdown. And I think Richard Tandy has got some great piano and Moog parts in here. And I think Kuaima is also good. I just it's just not an album I come back to. I don't think it's nearly as accessible or as coherent as their debut album. I think it was a bit of a regression for me anyway. But that's the only one in that early part of ELO, I think, that was a backtrack. I think Jeff was learning the ropes. He was learning songcraft, how to write a song, but there's not really strong melodies in here that really keep me wanting to come back on a re-listen for this. So that's probably going to be my left field controversial pick.
Yeah, okay.
Right, I got
Interesting.
one.
Well, I won't be talking about that one for a little bit, but I kind of see where you're coming from because I believe Roy Wood wasn't a part of most of that record, and it could maybe be sort of a bit of a transitionary record or viewed as such, which it definitely is. I just tend to really
Right.
like what they ended up making.
I
However,
think if I read correctly, the whole band had almost disintegrated. I think Bev Bevins was the only one that stayed around, the drummer, and he
sure.
stayed around all through the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. I was actually just looking because I have the CD right here. Yeah, everybody that you said was from the original group. That's actually the only main personnel on Balance of Power. So
Right, and I think I know people, I know fans love this album, so I will have to be forgiven.
It is what it is. I have all of these outfield picks all the time. It's about time people start breaking
Everybody's got to have an outfield pick. Come on, they're fun.
Of course. Number 10 for me is going to be Alone in the Universe. For not being very high on Zoom, I was ready to write off a lot of these late period ELO records as nothing but, well, they still kind of are just vanity pieces by Jeff Lynne. They probably could just be called Jeff Lynne solo records and it make more sense. But Alone in the Universe really showcases that he had a lot more to demonstrate within the Electric Light Orchestra sound. It's going back to their heavily orchestrated pop. And for coming out in 2015, it sounds absolutely great. Lynne's voice is rather strong. His pop rating is just as good as on Secret Messages. The title track is amazing. Love and Rain is very classic to me. Same with All My Life and I'm Leaving You. There were a few songs that ended up feeling a bit samey to me in the middle of the record, but they're still enjoyable when they're on. My main issue comes down to the backing vocals. They sound really Pro Tools-y and a good bit artificial on this record. That actually got fixed on the following record, but on here they sound pretty bad. But overall for me, it's a really good comeback record by a legacy group. Pretty on par with The Who's record from 2019, but I like ELO way more than I like The Who, so I'm going 4 stars for this one. Another really good record.
Wow. All right. Okay. So ELO 2 was 3 stars for me. My number 10 is Zoom. And I've got it at 3.5. I will come back to Zoom and listen to it again. It was a new listen to me as I was doing my homework here. So it took me by surprise by this time, Jeff Lynne and ELO were absolutely legacy artists. But and it's such a stretch to call this ELO. This is more than even maybe Alone in the Universe and maybe even more from Out of Nowhere. This is a real Jeff Lynne solo album, and there's a lot of Wilburys in here because George Harrison and Ringo are on this album, right? So it's got that feel. It's got those strumming acoustics. It's got what it has that I don't think Alone in the Universe has is tighter songwriting, better songwriting. I think he had these obviously in store for a while. He might have intended for this one to be a solo album, and it's possible the label pushed him into slapping the ELO brand on it. I don't know, but there's not really much of an ELO signature sound on here, but there is Jeff Lynne, that's for certain. Very strong melodies. I really think, again, he starts this album out with All Right, which is, I think, the strongest song on this album. It's a really good opener. I like the second song too, Moment in Paradise. I think it's good. And I like Lonesome Lullaby. I think again with he's got these lyrical tropes, Lynne. He's Wild West, especially when he was a kid, The Color Blue for some reason, Rain, Telephones, and he keeps coming back to them, right? He's got these he's got these anchors he likes to throw out lyrically. I wouldn't say he's a strong lyricist, but it is funny how he latches on to certain motifs. And you know, again, they're here in spades. Musically, he does the same thing too, and that's fine because they sound great. This is a good album. This I really like Zoom, and I know of these late 21st century albums, this one doesn't seem to be as well regarded as like Alone in the Universe. So, but you know, again, we're pretty much in simpatico except for my left field pick. So
The songs that I like on Zoom are really good. It's just I don't much care for the blues influence on it, which when we're recording because it hasn't came out yet, but I did the Peter Green solo video and I'm very positive on that, and I love his form of blues.
yes.
So I don't dislike blues at all. It's just I don't think that it works well
with Jeff.
Lynn's
No, yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty, but you touched on this record before, but you didn't actually talk about it yet. Now I'm talking about the debut, self-titled or No Answer, the only record to feature Roy Wood as a full member to my knowledge. And ELO were a very interesting band to start out, having leaned really heavily into the prog rock scene at the time. In this record, you can really feel those elements very strongly within the playing and the overall song structures. Despite that, Lynn's clear pop tendencies and love of strong melodies are very apparent across the whole record. One could potentially call it a bit aimless, but how some of these songs sort of go about mixing in how the melodies are written. But I think it leads to an interesting blend of how the band ended up starting out with this heavy prog emphasis and sort of weirder storytelling. And they ended up getting into their later pop zones because I feel like there's pop elements within these prog-based songs. I love the beginning overture, Nellie Takes Her Bow is great, and I love the closer Whisper in the Night as well. The biggest issue here is Jeff Lynne's vocals. Furthermore, how his vocals are produced. They're very low in the mix on this record, and I feel like it gets really buried by the orchestration as well as guitars. And he really isn't up to snuff as a singer. A lot of the time, he feels a bit like a George Harrison ripoff, which I'd say he does that across ELO 2 as well. It's just the songs are a lot better on ELO 2, in my opinion. I still find this to be incredibly interesting and a very unique record while I'm listening to it, but I don't know how much I would go out of my way to listen to this one, especially compared to something like ELO 2 or On the Third Day. Still, though, 4 stars. It's a very good record.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Very good. Okay. We are number 9, I think, right? So number 9 for me is going to be Secret Messages. I think this should have been the last ELO album of that initial run. It would have pieced together much better. I think Balance of Power is so poor. It's not a good way to go out. This would have been a much better way to go out. Secret Messages, Loser Gone Wild, and Bluebird are all really good. And that is a very good way to start, again, starting on an album with a 1, 2, 3 knockout. Really impressive. Unfortunately, then it starts to go down a little bit. I'm not crazy about Take Me On and On. You know, Lynne is a fantastic ballad writer. I think he's got a soft touch musically that's very appealing. And since he's such a good melodicist, he can really write a very touching, compelling ballad. But on these here on this album, they just don't do it. Four Little Diamonds is great. That's a great song. You know, about a gambler that steals his money and his heart. You know, again, Wild West shows up in here. These motifs just keep coming back over and over again. Lynne loves this stuff. Stranger's good. And you're right. I think, you know, as a double album, it's tedious. It drags. It really starts to drag. But I do think there's a couple of songs, Buildings Have Eyes, I thought was really interesting. It wasn't fully fleshed out, though. It's a silly little pop ditty. It's a trifle. But it's, you know, it's okay. It's a really good, it's a really good simple pop song that I think he could have worked into something better. And then Hello Old Friend, the final song, I thought, it sounds like it was intended to be, that's it for ELO, right? That sounded to me like he was putting a cap on things, but So I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a story behind how Balance of Power came to be, how it wasn't a Len solo album, how he had to probably slap the ELO moniker on it again. But I think it's very good. I think this would have been the best way to end such a fantastic run of albums. I give it 3.5 stars.
I don't necessarily disagree with anything of what you said. I just have it rated just a little bit higher. But I think that we're generally in similar feelings about the record. This one I'm interested where you're gonna have it place because this record I see fluctuate a lot across different rankings. But I'm talking about On the Third Day, which I'll get one thing out of the way. I much prefer the other artwork for this record. The one where it's the white and blue and it's sort of them just in front. I love that. I've seen it at this antique shop where I buy a lot of records from.
The belly button.
I wish I could have picked it up.
The belly button
like
cover.
That. If you want it to be.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, a very important record in the band's discography. It's the first one where they started leaving behind a decent bit of the progressive elements. And it still has different progs or flourishes at points. This is when they start getting into the more iconic ELO sound that most people know and love. Despite that, I actually prefer the production and overall sound of ELO too. And on some of the songs, it seems like they were playing a bit with really early synth moments on this one. They're really high pitched and really obnoxious to me. Just don't really care for it much. But sometimes the strings have that issue as well on this record. Mm-hmm. But it makes up for it with some absolutely incredible songs. Ocean Breakup and King of the Universe is great. I love Bluebird is Dead, Showdown, Daybreak, and Mama Bell are utterly outstanding as well. Jeff Lynne really starts to sound like himself here, and it allows the songs to really open up. And this is kind of what I always viewed his vision was for the first couple of records, but he just didn't have the chops to do it yet. And with a few production tweaks, I feel like this record could have been even higher, but it's still going to be 4 stars. It's another really strong ELO record.
Very good. Yes. I have it ranked higher than you, but we'll get to it. I do love that album. It's a really good album, I think. We're down to number 8. Is that right? Yep. Number 8 is the debut for me, the Electric Light Orchestra. I think it's a great debut. And I think they probably were taken aback at how successful they were on this debut, because you're right. Progressive rock is definitely at the forefront of this album, probably due to Roy Wood's influence here. I don't know, Adrian, have you ever heard any of Roy Wood's solo stuff, or Wizard with 2 Z's?
I was thinking about looking into it. Same with some of the early Move stuff and Jeff Lynne's solo. I'm not as knowledgeable on that stuff as I wish I could say that I was.
Could you hear the difference between the Roy Wood songs, primarily written songs, and the Lynne songs on this album? I think there's definitely I wouldn't say a dichotomy, but there's a despairing sound between the two, right?
I'd probably need to go back to it with the direct notes to be able to like immediately decipher. At least to me, it's kind of like sort of Rick Ocasek, Elliot Easton, Roland Orzabal, Kurt.
Yeah.
Beth, Tears for Fears or Cars sort of thing, where they're similar enough, but you can notably tell the differences whenever you have it in front of you.
Yes. I mean, there's musically, it's Baroque and roll, right? It's chamber pop or very, very strong symphonic elements. In fact, Roy Wood is primarily playing the stringed instruments on here. He's got everything from the bassoon to the string bass itself. Bassoon isn't, but he's playing clarinet, so he's playing all the orchestra instruments, all the symphonic instruments, and he's sawing those cellos so hard he sounds like he's going to saw them in half. It's like, in a way, it's got some metal like to the orchestral pieces here. It's very interesting, or like some of Harsher Edge King Crimson like to it, and I like it. I think 10538 Overture is fantastic. It's about an escaped convict, right? And thematically it's interesting. I like, but I like some of the Roy Wood stuff. Look at Me Now, it's good. And then Jeff Lynne shows up with Nellie Takes Her Bow. You can hear Lynn's, you're right, his vocals, he's not there yet. He's not there yet. He will get there, but he needs, it's going to take him 2 or 3 albums to really develop until he starts to come into his own, and I think sing confidently, right? But he can't, and when he does, he's fantastic. Mr. Radio, there's the start of the ELO sound right there, right? That is, everything from the thematically, lyrically, the song itself, to the way Jeff's singing. It sounds like it's being put through a tight compressor, like it's, you're getting it with static from a AM radio signal halfway across the country. It's great, and it's basically the inception, the seed of what will become ELO's signature sound later on. So that's here as well. Queen of the Hours, I think, is very good as well. I think more so on ELO 2 than this album in particular. Jeff's dad, there's a story. Oh, that's my dog, Ozzy, by the way. Jeff's dad, Jeff had asked him what he thought so far of, the ELO albums after the first or second one. He's like, son, the problem with your tunes are you don't have any tunes. And Jeff said, I heard what he said, and I said, I'm going to show you, you bugger. And so I think after ELO 2, you can definitely hear Jeff concentrating on songcraft. Here, I think it's more about the sound and the movement and the concept, musically anyway, of the album. I don't think there's any lyric concept. Some of the Roy Wood stuff, Battle of Marston Moor, it's very Genesis. It can be very Genesis-like, right? Very progressive, almost completely orchestral. But Roy Wood, I just don't find that compelling. Jeff, I did. So I think he's a standout here, and I think this is a very good album. 3.5 stars.
Yeah, that it's an interesting record for sure. A lot of unique, different things that were happening there, and maybe
Yeah,
in some ways,
they never sounded like that again. I mean,
sure.
it's a time capsule in and of itself.
For sure. You can maybe say a bit on ELO 2, but they were definitely straying away from what they were doing on that record. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of ELO 2, I'm not going too far away. I'm talking about ELO 2 now. I feel like a lot of people would have this rated even higher, though. Like a lot of the people that maybe weren't as into the more pop lens that Jeff Lynne would later go into. I feel like this and not the following record, but the one after, On the Third Day, that these are the two that sort of the more prog-leaning ELO fans tend to gravitate to. But progressive elements that were easy to spot on the debut are maybe even more formed on this record, because this is a fully formed progressive rock record, and it's amazing in my opinion. I love In Old English Town, the song Mama. I don't get how you think that it drags. I just think that it's utterly exceptional. I love the progression, and I think the use of strings is just absolutely sublime. From the Sun to the World is very good as well. I love the closer, Koyama. It's just amazing. It's 11 minutes long, but it's just so perfectly formed and effortless through its entire length. The guitar work and the strings are just the best they ever were at this early point through there. And the longer instrumental passage through the middle of the song is just utter bliss, in my opinion. So the production is much crisper and everything feels a lot more, fully formed. And Lynn's voice, it's still not great, but it works very well within this progressive lens. It still showcases just a ton of raw talent. I think that this is an incredibly strong record overall, with little and nothing wrong with it, except Roll Over Beethoven. I don't really
You don't like Roll Over Beethoven.
Don't much care for this cover. I get what they're going for, but it's just too long. It feels a little bit out of their comfort zone at this point. Despite this, for me, it's a very strong 4-star record. Some really wonderful stuff. I just can't quite call it great yet, but we're getting close to there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I think you know, it's interesting. I should like that album more, but I on the revisit, I was like, what is not getting, you know, I think Roll Over Beethoven is more nostalgia than anything else, probably. Although I will say, um, that was their first hit. Well, not really. 105.38 Overture was their first hit. They actually hit the top 10 in England, but it was their first, it was their second hit, I would say, in the UK, and it was played at least on FM radio over here in the States. ELO was like Steely Dan and some of the other arena rock bands, and Steely Dan's not arena rock, but some of the other ones like Boston. FM radio in the 70s really was starting to come into its own. The sound was much better. I'm not going to go into a history lesson, but anyway, ELO's perfect band for FM. You could really hear the full sound stage of the music. And I think, you know, as far as a mashup, I think it just took people by surprise at first. That was their, you know, that was where they were headed for the sound. Okay, now I would say on the third day is my choice. So we're very close, right? For next in line. And I've got this album at 4 stars. I think it's really good album. I go back to it all the time. You're right. Ocean Breakup, King of the Universe, awesome. Again, he just is so good. He's so good at picking the lead off tracks. It's uncanny. He's really knows. He knows how to do it. And I think he knows generally how to sequence these albums properly so that he takes you on an interesting journey. He brings you up, takes you down, comes right back again. Bluebird is Dead is a fantastic song. Maybe the stands that, you know, and there's some hits on this album, but that Bluebird is Dead may be the standout track on this. I'll call it a deep album cut. Really like it. Oh No Not Susan's got some Beach Boys influence. You know, it's not just Beatles derivative. It's not Beatles-esque with ELO. There's other influences as well, and you can hear it. Roy Orbison and Lynn's vocals in particular, right? And Del Shannon from the 50s you can hear. The Kinks you can hear in ELO as well, especially Ray Davis, his songwriting where he takes neighborhood characters or stories of his family and writes these great epics based on them. They're fantastic. And Jeff Lynne's got he took some of the best bits, not just from the Beatles, but from other 60s and 70s English bands as well. And you can hear that. And Beach Boys, I don't know if I mentioned that as well, but you can hear Beach Boys influence in Jeff's work as well. Showdown's awesome. It's an awesome song. Jeff, this is more of a rocker. ELO 2's it's more of a rocking album, right? It's progressive rock. It's not really Baroque pop or Baroque and roll. And this album even rocks harder. Of course, you've got Mama Bell, which another great rocker, awesome song, great hits to have on an album. And then he ends it with ELO's stamp on Griegs in the Hall of the Mountain King. So if you want your classical, he'll give you some classical. And he'll end it well. Great album, and you're right. His vocals are starting to improve here, and the ELO signature sound is forming. It's coming into being, you can tell. Plus, Lynn's songwriting has improved leaps and bounds here. He knows how to edit himself better here, and he knows how to write a more concise song. And it's going to get better from here.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Sorry. Am I going on too long? I don't want to go
You're
on.
all good, man. You're all good, man. I zoned out for a second there. That's my bad. I have a bit of a hot take. I have a bit of a controversy here. I don't think it's that bad.
With the next pick?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that's too terrible. I feel like more hardcore ELO fans would put this record a little bit lower, but I feel like this is like a fan favorite ELO record. That was contradictory. Oh well. I'm talking about Face the Music.
Oh,
Here's the thing.
okay.
Up to this point, this was the first record that I think fully dropped the progressive elements in general. Lynn and Co. were clearly trying to go in a more pop friendly and accessible direction, and on all fronts, they absolutely succeed. Evil Woman was a smash, and for absolutely good reason, because that song is just incredible. Especially the little guitar lick that flows into the verse, just totally stellar. I don't love Fire on High as the opener, though. It just feels strange to have it open. However, it's a great song. I think it's a very good song. It just feels like a strange opening choice. I love Waterfall, Evil Woman as well, and Knight Rider especially. I'm not crazy about Poker, which is the main thing that keeps it at number 6, just having that one song that I don't think is great. And the final 3 songs are just amazing, especially One Summer Dream. And overall, I find this to be a very good record and a great step forward into what the band would later come into. I used to have this rated much higher, but on this lesson, I just felt ever so slightly underwhelmed. It's still a very good record and absolutely 4 stars, but it's just not quite as great as I remember it being, but very close to it. This and the next record.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's ranked that low. And 4 stars is good, right? So yeah, I don't think it's too controversial. I mean, now we're getting into such rarefied air that it's like, okay, well, I mean, it's it's nitpicking at this point. And you'll see why in a minute. So for this slot, I've got Discovery, or Disco Very. However, let me tell you, Adrian, this is there's not as much disco on this album as people think. So you've got to have, there's a couple of check boxes you need to check if you're going to call it a disco tune. You got to have some syrupy strings if you got some syrupy strings, and of course they've got that in bunches. But they've had that for a while. And the other thing you got to have is 4 on the Floor. And there's only really 2 songs on. I read reviews of Out of the Blue being disco ELO. It is not disco. You can dance to some of the songs, but it's not disco ELO. This has disco on it, but it's not prominent. But what it does have, I think Jeff Lynne was listening to some R&B and soul is what he was doing, because he's got it on this album. In a white English guy, way, he's incorporating some boogie, he's incorporating obviously disco, but there's some vocal arrangements on this album, and there's also some club feel to the album. It was the follow-up to Out of the Blue, and that's a very tough album to follow up with, but he was willing to take, I think, some risks with this album. And I think they paid off. Plus, I've seen an interview with Jeff where he says, I love disco. So I've got no problem with his disco takes at all. Shine a Little Love, awesome song. Another great starting track. Confusion, another 1-2 punch again from Jeff. Need Her Love is a good ballad, I think. The Diary of Horace Wimp, here's where the Kinks influence really comes into play, I think. You can hear Ray Davis all over this song. Basically, Davis's focus on family and writing these grand pop songs based on photo books with his sisters. This one is, Diary of Horace Wimp is a meek little guy who's, needs to find a wife and get married. I think it does sound like a bit of a rewrite of Mr. Blue Sky. And I think it's a lesser version of that, but I still think it's a very good song. And I like the Kinks influence as well. And Diary of Horace Wimp has this vocoder performance that is out of this world. If you don't know what a vocoder is, if you've ever heard, I don't know, Peter Frampton, where they're basically singing through, it's vocalizing piped through either synthesizers or a guitar. I've never heard a vocoder performance as good as this one. Just a little interesting tidbit. Last Train to London. There's your first disco song right there. Four on the Floor, Syrupy Strings, also a great song. I saw ELO in concert in 2018. It was 2017, 2018. It was after they had a big renaissance with a Wembley performance they had done in 2017, I think. And they played 4 tracks off of this album. So Lynn holds it in somewhat high regard. Midnight Blue, great. That's a very good ballad of his. On the Run is interesting. I like its frenetic pace to it. I like the arrangements of it. And then Don't Bring Me Down, the huge hit off of this album, and the other disco song, right? And this was a huge hit for ELO. And it probably turned off a whole gaggle full of ELO zealots, because this was so far removed, right, from that, what I think they were expecting anyway. But I can remember dancing to it when I was a kid. I loved it. There's nothing wrong with somebody writing a song that can move your butt. Don't have a problem with it at all, and Jeff's pretty good at it.
Well, alrighty. I am also going to be talking about Discovery, and this is my last 4-star record. From here on up, I'm only talking about great records. Well, after this one. While not as classic or as important to ELO's legacy as something like Out of the Blue or A New World Record, this works as their most direct, their most consistent batch of songs, in my opinion. I'd call everything here at least very strong. They had much less in terms of personnel on this record, which helps lead the songs into a much more straightforward, more pop-leaning direction than they already were. With this probably being their most rocking record, if I had to pick one, as well working in some evident disco elements, as you mentioned. This record, disco? Very, yes. And I just love the sound that they end up going with for here. Songs like Shine a Little Love, Last Train to London, Midnight Blue, and Don't Bring Me Down are among the band's crowning achievements in terms of pop and rock writing. There's just very little to complain about across the whole. Listen, it's an amazingly solid batch of material that has very little in terms of low points. I just don't think that it's incredibly consistent, but I don't think that it has quite the stakes or the magic that my top 4 do. I want to mention this now because you brought it up a couple of times. I hear the complaint for ELO that they're just too Beatlesy. They derive themselves so far off of the Beatles blueprint.
Mhm.
I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't hear it at all. Like, I think I feel that they're really different. Like, obviously he has the Beatles influence in there, but I don't think it's at all to the degree that I hear people claim it to be, to claim how egregious it is and how just listen to the Beatles. Like, I think that he has his very own sentiments here, his own format of orchestrated pop. He doesn't really lean into the psychedelia that the Beatles ended up doing towards the end of their career. And especially on a record like Discovery, on something like Face the Music, I feel like there's very little that is really directly derived from the Beatles. If anything, I maybe hear more in terms of the Baroque pop stuff that was going on around the late 60s, maybe something more like a Zombies or like a Kinks.
Yes.
Like you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. That's correct. I agree. I think there's Beatles influence, and I do hear it.
Sure.
Especially in his melody writing and in his singing. You can tell that Lennon's an influence on his vocals, but so is Roy Orbison.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a clone. I don't think that the Beatle-esque elements are so strong that they overtake any originality that Len is able to get across with his compositions, with his songsmith, with his production. No Beatle could produce like Jeff Lynne. His production is just, as a producer, he is just, to me, he's just out of this world. He's top notch, top shelf, S tier. I think he's fantastic. So yeah, no, I mean, I do hear Beatles influence. I wouldn't go as far as you in terms of saying I don't hear it, but I don't think he's a clone. I don't think ELO is a derivative. And you're right. They had a lot of different influence, including King Crimson. You can hear it on their first 2 albums, right? In particular on their first two albums. I think probably Crimson was a bigger influence on Roy Wood than he was ELO or Jeff Lynne, but you can hear it. But yeah, no, I don't. I'm with you to a certain extent.
For sure.
It's not totally missing, but it's not. They're not a clone. They're not a. There's not. They're not such a close derivative that
For
there's
sure.
nothing original. That
Mhm.
far from it.
Absolutely. And to piggyback off something that you said, it says a lot that I believe 3 of the 4 Beatles have been produced by Jeff Lynne, or
Oh
maybe
yeah,
not.
including did you know about the anthology series that the Beatles have released?
I believe I've heard that Lynne helped work on that stuff. Because
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I don't think he ever actually produced a McCartney record, like solo
Yes.
McCartney.
Yes.
He did?
Flaming Pie.
Oh,
Yes.
really? That was him?
Yes. Yes. One.
That is an
Yes.
interesting one.
Yes. And guess what? That was, I think, for that come out in the
Wasn't
early
that
aughts or was that the 90s?
I believe that was late 90s, like
That was
96
McCartney's
maybe?
best-selling album for that
Ooh,
decade.
that's the magic of
In
Jeff Lynne
fact,
for you.
McCartney, so they had worked, so they had Lynn had worked with all 3 Beatles during the anthology. They had released 2 songs of John Lennon's that Yoko had given to Lynn and so the band basically added vocal harmonies, background harmonies, and besides, it was just solo Lennon on piano. It was "Free as a Bird," and I think it's "Real Love." I'm not a fan of "Real Love," but I thought "Free as a Bird" was very good. But anyway, Lynn produced that, and it was basically it was a doc. It was a multi-part documentary series on ABC. This was the 90s that the Beatles paid for, produced, and and it was the Beatles wanting to tell their story. But anyway, Lynn had a lot to do with that, right? And yeah, no, he's worked. You're right. He's worked with all 3 Beatles. Petty, right?
Yeah.
He's produced for Roy Orbison. He's
I'm looking at his I was looking at his Wikipedia because I was just curious now. Apparently he's worked with people like Regina Spektor, Joe Walsh. Just
yeah.
it's crazy how many
He and
people
Joe
he's
are
able to
really good
work with.
friends. He, Joe Walsh, and Ringo.
Nice.
It's like, yeah, it's great. No, just
Absolutely.
it's fantastic.
For sure.
So let's see, where were we? Discovery, right?
Yep, I just wrapped up. So number 5.
Well, guess what? We just flipped. I've got Face the Music. um, and it's great. So I think we're very close. What you said about Face the Music is pretty much spot on. Although I like Fire on, I think that's again, I think that's a good, that's a great, not good. That's a great opening track. They used to use that as interstitials in sports broadcasts in I want to say the 80s, late 70s, like Monday Night Football, believe it or not. And others would use that as they would break between, the end of a quarter and commercials. There's rock's always had, you've always got your instrumentals that are, or your metal ballads or whatever. Not ballads, excuse me, your metal anthems, I should say, that work real well. Waterfall's very good. Evil Woman, what a great song. Just a fantastic song. And probably the perfect mashup of strings and rock. I mean, it's just like and here, Face the Music. He was getting there on the 3rd day, but then when they got to Face the Music, this is where he comes into his own on production, I think. This is just an outstanding, it sounds so good. It sounds so good. Poker, I like Poker. It's okay. There's not a bad song on this album. Not a bad song on this album. Down Hometown, Little Country. Again, Jeff. He wears his influences. No Beatles here. This is all country. Strange Magic, beautiful song, one of my favorites. And then One Summer Dream, great way to end the album. This is a really strong album. So Discovery I had at 4 stars. This one I've got at 4.5. This is great and nearing essential. You could, if you're limited on money, right? I guess, believe it or not, here's how old I am, Adrian. You ready? My star ratings, one of the metrics in my ratings are, would I spend money on this album to buy it, right? Things change in the stream, but it was that was a huge decision, especially when you're younger. It was like, is this worth it? Am I going to listen to every song on this over and over? Is there something I want to skip? Even getting to listen to it, because there was no way you're going to hear it on radio. So, I mean, it was quite the decision to spend good hard-earned money as a kid or even as a teenager on something that you maybe had only heard, Evil Woman and Strange Magic, and that was it. Love those songs, but is it going to hold up? Yes, this album does hold up. 4.5. Buy it.
Okay.
You're gonna buy it on vinyl, you're not gonna make a bad decision. Sorry, go ahead.
I actually have Face the Music on vinyl.
Well, there you go.
I have that and a certain record we've skipped in the chronology, but I believe we're going to be getting there relatively soon.
Oh yes, man, we are close to simpatico on this. We're flipping some positions, especially in the lower ranks, but up here in rarefied air, it's a different story.
For sure. I mean, if we're talking about the country that may have helped influence Jeff Lynne on certain elements, I mean, we've talked about the Beatles, we've talked about the Kinks, we've talked about the Zombies, can't forget the Byrds.
No, Byrds, absolutely. Yes. Oh, yeah. Roger McGuinn in particular. Oh, yeah. 12-string Rickenbacker. That sound.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Lynne loathes that.
All right.
I think he worked. I think Lynne actually worked on one of Roger McGuinn's solo albums from the 90s, late 80s or 90s. Elvis Costello worked with him. Yeah, he was sort of hit. He didn't have a renaissance. He did not have a big comeback. He wasn't always, but McGuinn wasn't always one of the big personalities of the Byrds. Yeah. Definitely probably the best musician in the band, but not, not necessarily the front guy when you think of the Byrds anyway. One of.
He's definitely up there. I feel like I may be thinking of him more because he's the only one that, actually stayed in the band. He's got
absolutely.
Clark,
he was a core member, no doubt about it.
Because you got Gene Clark, but he was out by Turn.
Yeah,
and David Crosby.
But he was out. Yeah.
Notorious Bird Brothers, and you have Graham Parsons, who was there for a record and made them their best record. So and Chris Hillman left with him for Flying Burrito Brothers.
Yeah, alrighty. I mean, he was one of. It was more of a band. I think the Byrds than just one dominating personality, right? Running that group.
Well, alrighty. I feel like this is where we're going to maybe diverge a bit, or maybe we agree. Yeah, let's stir these up. Talking about Out of the Blue. When making a double record, bands often run into the risk of not making too much music, not being able to justify their length. Despite this, ELO comes out with a 17-track record that manages to make 16 of the 17 songs pretty much excellent. The opener, Turn to Stone, is just amazing. Lynn's greatest vocal performance, probably in general to me. I adore Sweet Talking Woman. Stepping Out is great. I love the mainly instrumental pieces that are filled through the record. Mr. Blue Sky is a classic for a reason. Sweet as the Night is absolutely gorgeous. And the instrumental of The Whale is wonderful. Lastly, the closer, Wild West Hero, is as well just excellent, having some of my favorite usage of strings in the catalog. As much as I love so much of the material here, and I feel like if I had to pick one record to define the Electric Light Orchestra by, this is probably the group's magnum opus in terms of how much material, how much of it works, and how much stylistic diversity they're able to tackle within this one record. It's hard to deny this one, but I think it's also a harder listen than maybe the three records that I have above it. And the length can be felt despite the difference in style and the amount of music that was going on. But it's just so good. It's a double record where there's really only one song that I'm not as into. It's a damn strong 4.5 stars for me. And if I'm being brutally honest, it's probably my second favorite double record just in general. So,
wow. There's some great double albums that I know you've heard. So that's saying something. Well, not going to talk about Out of the Blue yet. But we're up here in the top. We're up in the top 4. I mean, this is all great stuff. I mean, it's just a matter of small degrees at this point, really, isn't it?
I know it's coming. Just do it to me.
Oh well, up my next spot, I've got Eldorado. I think it again. I think it's and it came before. It was the album. It was the predecessor to Face the Music, but I think it's a little bit stronger of an album. It's not their only concept album, right? It's a loose concept album, very loose. I think the only sense I can make of it is it's about somebody who's so bored with their life they lose themselves in basically daydreaming. I've heard some theory, I've heard some speculation about reading. Don't get onto ELO subreddits. They're crazy. These people they're zealots. They're crazy. But anyways, somebody said, well, I think it's about an escaped prisoner who's gone so wrong that he regrets his decisions. I'm like, there's a song about that, but that's not what's going on here. And the album cover, of Dorothy's Red Slippers. It's a great album cover. I think it's very compelling. And you look at something like that you have to remember when it was released. It's like, do I want to buy this? And obviously, the artwork, believe it or not, was part of it. So it's like, yeah, this is. It's a loose enough concept that Lynn can throw everything in here and it still works. The overture, just like a symphonic piece, fantastic. But here, can't get it out of my head. I can't get it out of my head, I can't do it. That's how Jeff Lynne could create earworms the size of sandworms from Dune. It's more than just a talent. He was a master at it. Beatles were a master at it. Maybe that's why he gets labeled and stereotyped with just being a Beatles derivative, because he's such a good songwriter, and he didn't have a partner to bounce ideas off of. He had to do this himself. And for somebody to come along with Can't Get It Out of My, that's a perfect song. Perfect. Just a perfect song. Here we go again. Blue, the color blue. Jeffster's got some kinks, man. I'm telling you, he's got these lyrical motifs. Phones. I don't know what it is about phones, but they keep popping up over and over again in his songs. It's crazy. Laredo Tornado. Love that song. Love his singing on that song. Mr. Kingdom's fantastic. Man, there's everything here. These songs we're talking, I don't know. The only hit he had, the only hit ELO had off of here was Can't Get It Out of My Head, at least in the United States. That was their first hit in the US, by the way, too. It just flows so beautifully. But this is, as far as, I guess, concept work and just the last of the older ELO. There are progressive elements to this, right? But it's more progressive pop than there is rock. There's art rock in here, a strong art rock album, I think. Love his vocals on this. This is really where they come into their own. This is 4.5 stars. Great album. Eldorado. If you shelled out money to get it on vinyl, you would not be disappointed with that.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's a little bit up my list. Yeah, I'm glad that we still have a certain record in here. I have a feeling we're gonna diverge soon, but I'm glad.
But there's no room to diverge anymore.
I'm glad that we are, as of yet, correct. Next up, I'm going to be talking about a new world record. I know that you said that you had looked at my Rate Your Music before we started this, and this is one of them that I actually had rated a little bit lower. That took a massive jump forward whenever I listened to it today. This takes pretty much everything that was great about Face the Music, but it's able to fine tune it just really brilliantly. The biggest improvement on this record is the production. It's pretty much the first showcase of just the absolute brilliance of Jeff Lynne. All the instruments, the vocals, and the performances are just absolutely crisp and as pristine as you would want them to be. The strings especially pop in a way that they never did before this. And as well, it feels like one of their more rocking records. The guitars are really up front and blend into the strings better than ever before. And even more, there are just so many spectacular songs, some of his best pop writing, stuff like Tightrope, Telephone Line, Rockeria, So Fine, Living Thing, Duya, and Shangri-La are all just amazing. I mean, I can't say anything more. I can't say anything less. It's just a really, really great record. It's a very strong 4.5 stars.
Awesome sauce. Love that album. Love it. All right. My number 3 is going to be Time. My God, I don't even. So, Bev Bevins, the drummer, right? Dude always sounds like he's playing that kit with tree trunks. He's got that big sound. And on this album in particular, not because some of the songs are slower tempo ballads, not through the whole album, but in particular through the first 2 songs, Prologue, Twilight, and yours truly, 2095. As far as album openers, this is it. This is the greatest of all the albums as far as opening songs. This truly is epic. This is epic. This is, from what I understand, the first time a concept or an album thematically had a concept about time travel used, to compose its main theme around. And it's still loose here. Concept's still loose here. Not every song is necessarily about time travel or technology per se, or science fiction. However, it is a song about feeling isolated, about feeling out of place, about feeling like a fish out of water. And I think Lynn knew that the pop world in particular was probably going to start leaving him behind here. There's new wave elements on here, I think, and he incorporates them really well. And there's also proto Traveling Wilburys on here. There are a few songs on here. Let's see. That's The Way Life's Meant to Be in particular. Sounds like it could have been pulled off of a Wilbury album, a Jeff song off of a Wilbury album, but nonetheless. But Prologue, that little synth beginning sounds like you're going on a trip. And then Twilight is so good. It's such a good song. I love it so much. Totally epic. Bev Bevins, he loves his paradiddles. If you're a drummer, you know what a paradiddle is. He's got tons of double paradiddles on here. It's just going crazy, and it just kicks your butt. Damn near perfect song. Yours truly, 2095. It just seamlessly flows right into it. There's a great YouTube video of a mashup between, I don't know where the anime is from, but it's an anime and Prologue, Twilight, and yours truly, 2095 behind it, right? As if it was the soundtrack to it. In fact, there's no speaking in it. They've taken that all out and they've pushed the ELO sound up front. Somebody put it together. It's spectacular. Watch it. It looks like it was written for this anime. That's how different this sounding is. And this album in particular, if Discovery didn't leave them behind, this album would have left any diehards behind, I'm sure, because you've got it's basically synth driven, great song. So From the End of the World is awesome. The Lights Go Down. Here Is the News. I love that song. Goofy, but I love that song. Hold On Tight. Sort of a rewrite of Don't Let Me Down. Don't Bring Me Down, excuse me. And Jeff sort of did it again with Rock and Roll is King off of Secret Messages, right? Sort of that shuffle 50s. Although Don't Bring Me Down is certainly more disco-ish in a way. But anyway, Hold On Tight was a big hit for them off this album, but this album didn't do very well, not in the States anyway. And then you've got a little epilogue as a refrain for the whole album at the end. He loves doing that stuff. Great album. So different, I think, very different in their catalog. But nonetheless, the songs are so good, they stand up to whatever treatments, Jeff's giving them in the studio. It sounds great. It's a great production. Great album. Don't care if it's, I don't care if people think I'm overrating it because it's a 4 point. It's near perfect. It is a near perfect album. I've got it at 4.5, but boy,
To
I love this album. I love
yeah,
this album so much. It's
oh
great.
yeah, it's incredible. If you know anything about me, we're not talking about that record yet. We're talking about
Right.
Eldorado.
There you
Um,
go.
the true starting point for ELO, in my opinion, we're still able to use their prog background, but they're able to beautifully meld it into their orchestrated 70s pop sound. Jeff Lynne has finally reached where I would say he sort of stays vocally for a while, which to me is one of the greatest voices in all of rock music. And I'll go ahead and I'll just come out and say it is the greatest falsetto in rock. Just his falsetto is absolutely mesmerizing. As well, the writing is the best that we've seen at this point, filled with amazing songs. As you mentioned before, Can't Get Out of My Head, Boy Blue, Poor Boy, Mr. Kingdom, and Nobody's Child. My two favorite songs are the amazing closing-esque ballad title track and the absolutely amazing rocking track Laredo Tornado. Some of the greatest guitar work within the catalog. The opening of the song is just sensational, as well the chorus. Like, if it wasn't such a self-conscious bitch, I would try and sing it, but like, goddamn,
It's
damn, having
it's
talent and
tough.
stuff. It's crazy.
I love it. I
So
love it. I
good.
agree. I
And
love that chorus.
and the worst part is the vocals aren't like perfect, and the vocals are like slightly lower, and it's like I just wish that they were a little bit higher and soaring, because then it would just be like, imagine hearing that like at his peak live. That would have just been like mesmerizing. The only track that I didn't personally care for was Illusions in G minor. I just thought that the guitar sounded really dirty and just really loud for no apparent reason, which I don't have any faults with that. I've done Dinosaur Jr. video. I have no faults with like loud distorted guitars, with Pixies and stuff. It's just this is an ELO record. Know your lane, man. But at the end of the day, in most ways, this is a culmination of the ELO sound and what they've been working to up to this point. Another incredibly strong 4.5, nearing 5 stars, but we're jumping incredibly far for my number one. So
Very good. Totally agree with you. Now everybody gets to hear me sing Laredo Tornado. All right. We are at number 2. Well, I've got a new world record. It's a 5-star album. And depending upon the day, I know a lot of album raters, it's their favorite cliche. It could be number 1, I go back and forth. Might be number 2, might be number 1, depends how I feel, depends which way the wind's blowing, but I don't know. I'll put it at 1B. How about that? A new world record. You described it quite well, Adrian, and it's the songwriting is just stellar on this album. Tightrope, such a great song. Tough to play. That is a tough song to play. Telephone line. Here we go with phones again. Man, he loves his phones, Jeff, I tell you. But it's a beautiful song. Rockeria. Love the operatic vocals at the beginning of it. I love just shouting out all these composers one after another in the lyrics. It's a great song. It's a great concert song. Jeff loves playing it in concert, and it always sounds great. Great rocker. And this is the last time I think that they would really sort of like put together. This was what Roll Over Beethoven, I think, gave Jeff the idea of like, oh, this is perfect. This is what I should be doing. This is what people bought. This is what, people want to hear. This is his version of perfecting it, basically. Mission, very good. Living Thing. Oh, what a great song. One of my favorites. Top 3 at least. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one of. It's such a great song. So interesting. And I love again, that heavy sawing on the strings. Love that. It's got some oomph. It's got some power behind it. Great vocals. You're right. By this time, he perfected his vocals, his falsettos. are beautiful. Amazing. Do Ya, great rocker. Shangri-La, beautiful way to end the album. Gorgeous. This album really is perfection to me. This is if you want a picture in Patrick's dictionary of 5-star albums and what it would be, this would be one. I'd put this album cover in there. Love the album cover too. I love the city skyline. It looks like the giant ELO spaceships coming down. Everybody get ready. Jeff Lynne's your captain. These crazy spaceship arena rock bands from the 70s. I don't know where this. I mean, science fiction was definitely coming up, but it's such a strange sort of, I don't know what you call it, trait or marketing thing to latch on to. What are you looking for, Adrian?
No, I have the Boston self-titled record. I figured that would have been a good thing to put out here, but I don't know where I placed it. Ah, that's
Journey.
I do not. I had them at one point, but not anymore.
Boston, Journey, and ELO. The big spaceship band.
That's the big three right there. Oh, weird. Styx never had one. No, you mentioned them earlier.
Yes, I agree.
They're like the weirdest, like the most science fiction.
Another prog pop. Yeah.
On the plus side, we have whatever the hell they were going for on the Grand Illusion. So
yeah, more of there's some fantasy elements to Styx too, right? So it's not as sci-fi, I would say. But there's nothing sci-fi about Journey. They just slapped Journey was just slapping spaceships on the cover so they'd sell. There you go, Boston. There's nothing sci-fi about. Well, they got a bit of a sci-fi sound.
Yeah, there's more than the feeling there.
Yeah, arena rock in space.
Sure. I don't know if I go now.
It sold records. That's all you need to know.
It sold too many records. I feel bad for the people that bought the later period records.
Ooh, yeesh.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
Talk about a band cloning itself. There you go.
Cloning itself. Well, like fucking destroying itself.
Yes, at the same time. Absolutely.
So, as I was saying before, Eldorado is a great record. A New World record is a great record. Out of the Blue is a great record. Time is an exceptional record, and I will die on this hill. By far in the top, like, I think I slightly prefer Sunburst Finish by Bebop Deluxe, but this and that are like my two absolute favorite records that I've gotten to talk about for the show. In many ways, this is a perfect record. The production is absolutely incredible. The way that Jeff Lynne is able to blend in early synth pop with his always gorgeous orchestral moments and the progressive rock background is just sensational. The band is writing some of their most catchy and memorable moments, and Lynne is at his absolute peak as a writer here. It's a concept record, but who the hell cares when practically every song is just perfect? Twilight, Yours Truly, 2095, Take It to the Moon, Rain is Falling, The Lights Go Down, and 21st Century Man. They're just all 10 out of 10s, in my opinion. Just a perfect blending of synth pop and pop rock. And at the rest, and everything else in the record is just as good. In many ways, I would call this an 80s variant of Eldorado. It blends together everything that they were working with at the end of the decade. It has the amazing production of a New World record. It has the sonic variation and the unique elements that were found in Out of the Blue, and it has the more direct and straightforward focus that made Discovery so interesting. And it's able to blend together with Lynne's best writing, the most interesting decaded sound at that point in time, and just ultimately culminate in an absolutely sensational record on pretty much every front. This is an easy 5-star record, but it doesn't beat the Tubes though. So sorry, Jeff Lynne. But yeah, amazing.
You've always got these great comparisons in your head. It's great.
Yeah.
That I would never even think about. So it's like
For sure.
B-Way. Sure, yeah, B-Way Bill. I can see that. Hey, a great description of that album. Really good insights. I just, you're not gonna have to die on that hill. Nobody's gonna come after you for this.
No, I know,
Not in this Zoom meeting.
I,
Nobody's.
I know a few people are wanting to push me off there, but it's okay. I'll make it work.
I don't care.
It's all good.
You like what you like. You love what you love, and I
For
love
sure.
this album too.
I
And
gotta get
I
that
will
on
die
vinyl.
on the hill with you. So
Well,
if there's a hill that's you got to die on, that's a good one.
we can hop on the Boston spaceship blaring it because
Exactly.
they're listening to that
They'll come
from
down and save
Boston.
us.
So
They're gonna transfer exactly.
it's more
It's
it's,
gonna-
it's
they're
more
gonna
than a feeling.
transport us. They'll save us. ELO spaceship's gonna come and save us. Jeff's gonna see this and he's gonna be like, "Who are these people?"
We can't have that one. They don't even have the spaceship on this album cover. It's like all futuristic and whatnot. We haven't gotten there yet.
It's a beautiful record, just a
For
beautiful
sure.
record. I read that that theme of isolation and the lyrics and the sound of it even that Jeff was feeling that himself, and I think that's probably where he came up with that concept. There are a
That
lot of
makes sense.
songs about on that album about just not feeling like taking Brian Wilson approach. I just wasn't made for
Sure.
these times, right?
Mhm. If only I like the Beach Boys as much.
I love the Beach Boys, but certain Beach Boys.
Yeah. My favorite Beach Boys period is actually like the early 70s.
There
weirdly
are whole
enough.
decades of Beach Boys that.
What, you're telling me you don't want to listen to the 1998 NASCAR record?
Any Mike Love driven stuff, forget it. I'm done.
What?
That's where the line gets drawn.
I mean,
Okay,
Mike Love
this
is
is
the reason
not
Surf's Up is only 4.
Oh, Surf's Up? The
Student
song, you
Demon.
mean?
No,
Oh,
the
no, the
record.
album.
God, Student Demonstration Time is
Yeah,
bad.
no. There's no. That's not even close to a perfect or an essential album.
Yeah.
No.
It's still my
I
favorite.
don't disagree with that at all. Yeah, it's good.
Alrighty.
And some of my favorite Beach Boys songs are on there, but they're not. Mike Love has nothing to do with
Let's
it. Back up.
Let's get out of the blues of this Beach Boys stuff.
Yeah, let's go to Out of the Blue. Perfect. It's tough you're right. It's very tough for a double album. I think the only disagreement I have with you is that I think he does nail it here. I can't think of a song that I would get rid of off this album. And that says a lot. Even the silly novelty tunes like Jungle, for instance, I think are fine. And I like them. I'm not going to stand up and pick up the needle to skip this song. And I like it. I gladly listen to it on repeat. And this song is heavy, revisit, re-listen all the time. It's on rotation for absolute certainty. It's never left. Turn to Stone. That is my favorite ELO song. It sounds like you're on the spaceship landing. You're on the shuttlecraft, actually, on the album cover, landing in the spaceship itself, right? You're coming in for a landing. And the way that song fades in and the guitars, it's just perfection. And it is the peak. This is peak ELO right here. It's Over is fantastic. Sweet Talking Woman. Maybe this is where some people think they got disco-fied, but they did not. This is not a disco song. It's a boogie, or it's a shuffle, if it's anything. Cross the Border is great. Night in the City is fantastic. It opens up with the strings and the horns, faking urban noises, so it's instruments playing that sound like car horns and traffic in the street and people talking, and it's just a wonderfully written song, beautiful melody. And then you've got Believe Me Now, which is really good. Stepping Out, which is fantastic. I think you mentioned that, Adrian. Great song. And then on the third side, if you've got it on vinyl, you've got, and probably on the second CD, I think it did come in a 2 CD set, right? I've only got the vinyl. Those first 4 songs you wouldn't see it on the streaming service, I don't think, but they're listed. They're a concerto. They're concerto for a rainy day. Here we go with Rain again, right? Loves the rain. He's got lots of songs about rain. But these are his best. Standing in the Rain, great way to start. Big Wheels, such a beautiful song. I love his vocals on this song. I love the backing vocals on this song. Beautiful minor key melody. Such a beautiful song. Summer and Lightning leading into Mr. Blue Sky, which is just, of course, it's peak. This is the ELO of most people's familiarity with this band. It's going to be Mr. Blue Sky if they know anything. The song always gets revisited by a generation or two. You know, it may skip one or two, but then it comes back around again. That's how strong this song is, how perfect it is. Everybody, I'm sure, watching this video has heard at least that song. And then the fourth side of the double album, Sweet as a Night, great way to open that side up. The Whale, an instrumental piece. I kind of like it. It's pretty good, very Yes-like in a way, which is surprising. But they could sometimes when they did their prog, they could be a little Genesis-like, they could be a little King Crimson-like, sometimes they could be Yes-like too. And I think, God, horrible Yes song for the Whale. I think this is better. This is a better Whale song. Birmingham Blues, another rocker, right? And then Wild West Hero, Jeff's, you know, I mean, this, When I Was a Boy, is obviously very direct from his childhood experiences, but so is this song. And it's great. It's a great concert tune. They always played it in concert. You know, they've got that great, you know, it sounds like they're sitting around the campfire, Wild West. You know, even the acapella there, the acapella break towards the end of the song is fantastic. And of course, Jeff's, you know, immaculate production. He's just in the studio. He's not only a fantastic musician, he's a polymath. He can pick up instruments and pretty much, I wouldn't say master them, but become competent on them within hours, probably. Including, he plays cello, for goodness sake. So keyboards, drums, he's like Paul McCartney, Stevie Wonder this way. Multi-instrumentalist, just fantastic. Can't praise him enough, can't praise this album enough. 5 stars, perfect. Double album, very hard to get. It's so hard to achieve with that level of consistency. Yep. And man, we've gone on for a while, but it's worth it. The ELO is worth it.
For sure. If I may, I made a brief observation here. This is going to sound really intelligent. I'm going to look like a dumbass, but here we go. We're just looking at the cover again, and I'm just thinking it comes at the perfect time. Because you're like the little ship and you're exploring, like, because of it being a double record, you're exploring like everything in the ELO ship. You're getting the full sort of package, the full experience of the band. And I feel like from this point, they aren't as heavy on the orchestration. Like, it's still there on Discovery.
No,
it's not as blatant.
It's
this is kind of like,
yes, you're right.
This is kind of like you're flowing through the atmosphere. You're like on a mission to get to this point. And this is sort of the culmination of your journey. And while you may not prefer it, it's hard to deny, like, if this were the last ELO record, I'd be sad because time wouldn't exist. But in reality, you would sort of get everything that the Electric Light Orchestra was about, because with the more instrumental passages, you would have the progressive elements that were going beforehand. You would have sort of that middle period with the Concerto for a Rainy Day. You would have sort of the less overtly pop stuff with something like, I don't know, Jungle or Stepping Out. And then you have some of the pop bliss of something like A New World Record, and then the more rock-oriented stuff like Turn to Stone.
It's got everything.
It really is a culmination of everything that the Electric Light Orchestra did up to this point.
Yes, you're landing on the Jeff Lynne spaceship. Yep. He's your captain.
I just wish it was shorter.
It's his world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no. I think that's a valid criticism of the album, is that it can seem long. It's 70 minutes. It's it's a double album. But to me, I always find it every song I find, at least, it is engaging enough to me, and I find interesting enough. And then, man, the great songs like Turn to Stone, Sweet Talking Woman, Mr. Blue Sky. God, get out.
They're too good.
Bands would give up limbs to have songs that there's so many, there are so many musicians that would kill to have just those 3 songs.
I mean, it says a lot. Like I said, it's my second favorite double record just in general. And the only real double record that I consider better is Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. But you could argue that Stevie Wonder is debatably the greatest musician of all time.
Yes.
Which it really takes that to be able to beat out Jeff Lynne at anything. And it's just insane.
Yes, you could very well make that argument. You are correct. You're right on. You're right on the money.
Oh, yeah.
You got it, Adrian.
Yeah. Got the music on my mind.
Can I just say something? This has been a lot of fun.
For sure.
I have had a lot of fun talking about this.
That's great.
I know I'm probably pontificated a little much, but I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm sorry. If I'm gonna gush, it's gonna be about the Jester. It's gonna be about the beauty of the ELOs. Yeah, it would be about the Beatles too. If I were to talk about that.
Meet me in January for that one.
Obviously.
I have
Obviously, you can see the shrine behind me.
I have some opinions on that record, but I'll leave them to myself for now.
Well, yes, exactly.
Meet me in January.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Oh, yeah. We got a while to go for that one. But yeah, I think that we have been able to demonstrate our opinions upon the Electric Light Orchestra. If you haven't picked up on that, I think that you may have accidentally skipped to the end, and I apologize. With that being said, though, this band's amazing. Jeff Lynne alone.
And you shouldn't. And if you skip to the beginning, or if you skip to the end of the list, which is the greatest stuff, you should go back a little bit, because their great stuff is quite a chunk of their catalog. And we're talking 6, 7 albums here of great, near perfect, and perfect.
I'd probably wager a bet to say the streak of, for me, ELO 2 through time might be the strongest, like, consistent album stretch of any artist. And that's like, how many records is that?
For me, but it stretches all the way to time. So yeah, we are so close on this. I mean, we're not simpatico, but it's pretty close. Yeah. We're flipping positions by only 1 or 2.
Yeah, except for ELO 2, that's the big one. That's
the and I had a higher. That's the one that fell for me. And
that was Face the Music
and a re-listen. Yes, yeah.
Because if I had to guess going into this, I probably had Face the Music presumed at my number 2. It was my 2 or 3. It was going to be between, because before doing this, I had Eldorado, Out of the Blue, and Face the Music all very high in my 4.5 stars. They were like right up there. I think I had Face the Music right below my actual number 1 4.5 star record, which is Psycho Candy by the Jesus and Mary Chain. Because
I love that album. Yeah,
absolutely sensational.
Love that album. Absolutely.
Sure. I have a little set, actually.
I'm a big shoegaze fan. So.
Oh yeah. Ooh, that could be interesting.
That's a granddaddy of them. Yeah, no, I was, well, I'll let you bring up the topic that's coming up. I don't want to spoil it for your video. But
true.
I was thinking of several shoegaze bands. but I did not pick one. I did not pick one. Okay, but I was thinking, I was giving them serious consideration.
Rich actually picked a shoegaze act whenever he was first on. He picked Catherine Wheel. I don't know how familiar with them you are.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. Now I wasn't gonna go My Bloody Valentine though, but I was gonna go shoot. I was definitely gonna do shoegaze.
I need to listen to more My Bloody Valentine. I've only ever heard Loveless, and that was when I was like first getting into music. I gave it a 7 then, which I guess it showcases that I was willing.
It rewards on re-listens.
Oh yeah. It does. Man, this is as far away from ELO as we could have gotten.
Sure is.
Well, speaking of far away from ELO, next week, Zach is coming back, and we are talking about one of Zach's biggest pleasures in music, especially modern music, talking about the band, the 1975 sort of 80s pop revival band. Well-known stuff like Chocolate on this record, City, Love Me, plenty of hits. Excuse me. I just had that thing where you feel like you have to sneeze, but it doesn't actually
you
come
didn't.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible. Hate that. But yeah, 5 records. New one came out somewhat recently, and feeling is back. Goody me. Yeah, that's going to be with Zach, and that's going to be a lot of fun. That's already been recorded, and I thought that was a good discussion. That being said, though, ELO, absolutely sensational. Too much to talk about, too much that people probably skipped over. With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed what you did watch. Hope that you had a great time. I would presume that both he and I did as well.
But I'm not done yet.
Alrighty, so as seen in the Bond themes video with Zach, who 1975, of course, I will be doing next week, one of his favorites. For people's first appearance on the show, you get a choice of artists to cover. We had some interesting picks. Good friend Cammy picked Billy Ocean. Tavi went with Lindsey Buckingham. Vanessa went with B-52s, and if you saw that video, you know how that went for me. And there are plenty of other selections. So, my good friend, what shoegaze band have? Oh no, you didn't go shoegaze.
No, I did not pick a shoegaze.
What group did you decide to give me the pleasure or displeasure of covering?
Oh, I think there was much pleasure in this discography.
Ooh.
So I think I'm going to pick Sade.
Ooh.
And I think you're really going to like it. If you have any preconceived, and I don't think you do. I think you.
I don't even know how to spell it.
Sade sounds like Sade, or
Okay, that makes sense.
Are you familiar with Sade at all? So that is the name of the band. It's the name of the singer, but it's also the name of the band.
Name.
Have you? What's a big song? Sweetest Taboo.
I couldn't tell you if I know it.
Oh boy.
I'm looking at the.
I envy you.
Okay, that's not too bad.
You haven't heard any of this. Your Love Is King.
Ooh. This is going
Never as good as the first time.
This is going to be interesting.
Sweetest Taboo.
I'm excited for this one.
Diamond
actually.
Life.
I mean, you and I both
When
know.
am I going to make a living? Oh,
we've been talking about this before.
No Ordinary Love.
Man, you're just running through all of them, huh? That being said, hope you all have a great one. Bye.